I've been a driving instructor since 2009, and over the last 12.5 years, I have tried every different teaching method I can both think of or I've been told about from other instructors, from taking beginners on very challenging roads, including roundabouts, to having a more structured method where you have a series of steps, each step giving the pupil more skill, knowledge and confidence, enabling them to move on to the next step more easily. When people find out how long I've been a driving instructor for, the next thing they usually want to know is how old I am. Well, it's my birthday today, the 28th of June, and I'm 34 years old. And I have some grey, just there. Trying to stick with the theme of the video, I find a structured method tends to work best, and I've spent years honing mine. And in this video, I'm going to share that with you. I have broken learning to drive down into 4 main modules, 1, 2, 3 and 4. And firstly, in this video, I'm going to briefly explain what's included in each module, and then I will show you in a bit more depth. So module 1 is basic car control. So the pupil's learning to move, stop, steer and change gear. Once they've done that, then we move on to module 2, which is basic junctions. That's turning into a road on the left, the right, coming to the end of the road to turn left or right, traffic lights turning right, very important, that one. Many people forget that you've got to give way to oncoming cars sometimes when you're turning right at traffic lights. Mini roundabouts and maybe some smaller simple roundabouts if they're unavoidable, but I don't actively try to do roundabouts on module 2. With module 1 and module 2, it's very important I stick to roads where we can pull over regularly. For module 1, you need to pull over regularly, and for module 2, it's certainly helpful to help you learn. Module 3, now we're going on to more busy roads, roads where you can't stop, multiple lanes, big roundabouts, dual carriageways, 70-mile-an-hour roads, country roads as well, and motorways if there is a motorway nearby. Then module 4 is reversing, all your manoeuvres, and including mock tests. Also, by the time you're near the end of module 3 and going into module 4, that's when I'll be practicing independent driving with my customer, getting them to follow the sat-nav and the road signs. Emergency stop. Well, this one I tend to be quite flexible with. I can do it as early as module 2, but if someone's quite nervous, I like to delay it, because doing the emergency stop and generating about 1 G of force in the dry or 0.6, 0.7 G of force in the wet can make people feel a little bit anxious. So if someone is a little bit nervous about learning to drive, I tend to leave it later, because the better they are at driving and the more comfortable they feel with driving, generally the easier it is to teach that one. This is the sort of place I'll take people for module 1. It's quiet, it has a low speed limit, and there's loads of places to pull up at the side of the road. But before they sit behind the steering wheel, I'll get them to stay in the passenger seat and learn both the brake and the clutch, because learning those 2 pedals from that seat is much easier, as they don't have everything else to think about. Once they've learnt those 2 pedals, then I'll get them in the driver's seat and learn how to adjust the seat, the steering wheel, get the seat belt on, set the mirrors, etc. for their height, their body size. Once that's done, I explain the differences between the ignition and the engine, and how to turn the engine on, and how to operate the windscreen wipers if it's raining. Then I'll make sure they can get good foot position on the pedals so they're comfortable using the pedals, and practice the gas to get used to the sensitivity of the gas. Once that's done, we move on to the gear stick. I get them going through the first few gears, maybe 4 gears, just to get used to how the gear stick is, and taking the handbrake off and putting the handbrake on as well to get used to that too. Once all the controls have been covered, then I'll talk about where they should be looking and what the blind spot is so they move away safely. And then I'll explain to them how to judge when they're near the curb using the bottom of the window. Link to a video on that in the top right hand corner of your screen, a video I made earlier. Then we will do short hops. I'll explain we're only going to go as far as the lamppost on the left. We do lots of short hops, starting and stopping, so they get used to moving away until they are more independent at doing it. Also part of module 1 is learning how to steer and keep the car centered in the middle of our half of the road, and how to deal with small bends like this one, but also very basic left junctions, more to get used to how much to steer around the bend than anything else. When my pupil is able to move away from the side of the road, slow down and stop near the curb without hitting it, change to second and to third gear and keep a relatively good position within our half of the road, when my pupil can do all of those skills with very little help from me, that's when they're ready for Module 2. These are the types of roads I'll take my pupils on for Module 2. Firstly, they'll be learning to master basic left turns. As they get better, I'll include some left turns at traffic lights. Once they're more or less independent at left turns, they'll practice right turns at both basic junctions and at traffic lights where you need to wait in the middle of the junction for oncoming cars. Then I'll include routes with easy mini roundabouts. I try to avoid proper roundabouts in Module 2, but I am willing to include some very easy roundabouts near the end of the module if it's hard to plan a route without them. Module 2 roads generally start off very quiet with few parked cars, and as my pupil progresses and gets more skill, I make the roads more busy, and I also go places where there's more parked cars, traffic calming measures, and even pedestrian crossings. By the end of Module 2, my pupil will be around about 70% of the way through their training. They'll have very good control of the car. They'll certainly be able to do angle starts where you have to move away from the side of the road with a car in front of you. And they'll be able to deal with T-junctions, traffic lights, mini roundabouts, pedestrian crossings and parked cars, all with very little help from me. Module 3 roads include busy multi-lane roads and roundabouts which are inappropriate for learning car control. So by the time you're on these roads, it's best you can already handle the car. Also, there is rarely anywhere to pull over to compose yourself if it's all getting a bit much. Module 3 roads also include various country roads, from roads you can maintain a consistent high speed on to roads that require you to accelerate on the straights and brake before the bends. I also include some single track roads with passing places nearer the end of Module 3. My pupils will also be learning how to deal with 70-mile-an-hour roads, including how to enter and leave using slip roads. They'll also get used to following the road signs and using a sat-nav. By the end of Module 3, my pupil will be over 90% of the way through their training and will be able to drive everywhere with only very occasional help from me. Module 4 is all about manoeuvres and mock tests. By the time my pupil is on Module 4, they're already excellent at car control, so learning manoeuvres doesn't take long. They'll need to learn how to reverse into a car park parking space, drive forwards into a car park parking space, then reverse out again, parallel park, and pull over on the right hand side of the road and reverse back 2 car lengths. But of course, everyone is different and all driving instructors teach people in a different way. I have found having a structured syllabus works well, but some people prefer just to do it more randomly, wherever they happen to be. Well, we're near this road, let's use this road. But I find that often leads to problems, especially with more nervous learners. In fact, it's only probably about 10% or less of the population that can really take in loads of information from a driving instructor when they have very little experience and do most of what they're being told. Quite often they're going to do very little of what they're going to be told. That's going to make the instructor frustrated, and that's going to make the pupil very frustrated. It's also going to lead to problems which can also cause anxiety. Look, mini roundabout, centre, left mirror, left signal, we're going left, start braking, you're coming too fast, brake. Why'd you brake that hard? The brake pedal's really hard to use. Don't blame the car, it's only my second lesson. Just brake properly next time. I will often drive my pupils to suitable locations for their current level and what roads they need in order to progress, because the routes I choose really make a difference as to whether or not my pupil improves on that lesson or not. If they're concerned about the time it takes for me to take them there, and so they should be, they're paying for a driving lesson, it's a good idea for me to meet them there. If I can tell them where is the best place for them to learn, meet me there at whatever time the lesson's booked, that can really make the learning process more efficient. It's very tempting to just start the lesson wherever the pupil happens to live, work or study, but that's very rarely the location that currently suits the pupil's skill level. but by the time they're on module 3, they can start the lesson pretty much anywhere. A while ago, I did a video of me helping one of my pupils learn roundabouts. I'll link to it in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Now, in that video, I mentioned that my pupil had only done 10 hours and that it was really good for him to be doing roundabouts already with only 10 hours of practice. Yet, many of the comments were quite surprised, saying, well, I did roundabouts on my second or third lesson. And yes, I could have got Jake, who was the pupil I was teaching, to do the roundabouts on even his first lesson if I really wanted to, if I talked him through it. It's just that's not how I do things these days. I've done it in the past, but I find having a structure is much safer and is less stress for both me and the pupil, and also it causes less anxiety for some of my pupils. And one of the worst things I could do as a driving instructor is teach in a way that causes some of my customers to be anxious. I do have customers who are fairly nervous, and they're quite common actually, and if I was to throw too much at them too quickly, it's actually going to make them worse, not better, and may even give them some long-term problems when it comes to driving. The syllabus and structure I use doesn't disadvantage the people who are very talented at driving. It just means they get through the syllabus quickly, but it really does help the people who struggle with learning to drive. Well, I hope this video helps. Please give it a thumbs up if you think it does, and check out Collingwood and Confused in the description. Collingwood are great if you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, because you can do so without affecting their policy. And via the link in the description at the moment, there's up to 35% off and a £20 Amazon gift card. If you want to compare the price of different insurers, check out the link to confused.com. You can fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back. You can also change the car on the quote loads of times, as many times as you like, to see how much it costs to insure different cars. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support this channel. So thank you very much. Check out Facebook and Instagram if you wish. They're both Conquer Driving. And subscribe to get my future videos. And until the next one, cheerio.